We're told from the moment we can understand words that happiness is the goal. That if we just do the right things, follow the right path, check the right boxes, we'll get there. Happiness is sold to us in commercials, in classrooms, on social media feeds. Smiles are currency. Positivity is performance. But what if everything we've been led to believe about happiness is not only wrong, but dangerous? What if happiness, this thing we chase endlessly, isn't the goal at all, but a trap?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Imagine this. You wake up one day and realize that no matter how much you've achieved, how much you've acquired, how many people praise you, there's still a hollow space inside. You feel like you should be happy. You've done everything right, but something's missing. And it's not more stuff. It's not more attention. It's not even more love. It's something deeper. Something that can't be filled with dopamine hits or motivational quotes. And here's the truth. Viktor Frankl understood this better than anyone. Frankl, a survivor of Nazi concentration camps and the author of Man's Search for Meaning, said, "Happiness cannot be pursued, it must ensue." One must have a reason to be happy. That one sentence dismantles the entire modern psychology of positive thinking. Because if happiness is the goal, then the moment you're unhappy, you failed. And that failure becomes shame. That shame becomes anxiety. And that anxiety becomes the endless cycle that fuels everything from consumerism to addiction. We've been conditioned to believe that if we're not smiling, something is wrong with us. But what if the pursuit of happiness is the very thing causing our suffering? What if happiness is not a destination, but the accidental byproduct of doing something that matters? Frankl saw men stripped of everything: clothes, names, dignity, and yet some still found meaning. Not comfort, not pleasure, meaning. And that meaning became their survival. Ask yourself, if your life was stripped down to nothing, if everything you love was taken away, would you still find a reason to wake up tomorrow? That's not a depressing thought. That's a liberating one. Because it forces you to go deeper than the illusion of happiness. It forces you to confront the truth of your existence. And in that confrontation, something extraordinary begins to awaken. We live in a world obsessed with feeling good. But life isn't here to make us feel good. Life is here to make us grow. And growth often comes through pain, through loss, through challenge. Nietzsche wrote, "To live is to suffer. To survive is to find some meaning in the suffering." But if we believe that happiness is the goal, then suffering becomes a mistake. And we run from it, numb it, deny it. And in doing so, we end up living shallow, disconnected lives. The greatest men and women in history did not pursue happiness. They pursued truth. They pursued justice. They pursued beauty, wisdom, love, sacrifice. And in those pursuits, they often suffered, but they were alive. They were present. They were anchored in something bigger than themselves. And that is what gave their lives weight. Not the fleeting emotion of happiness, but the eternal presence of meaning. Viktor Frankl watched men in Auschwitz give away their last piece of bread to someone who was weaker. He watched them die with dignity rather than live in cowardice. And he realized that even in the most unimaginable horror, man could choose his response. He said, Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances. That's not a feel-good quote. That's a revolutionary truth. Because it means that no matter what life does to us, we are still responsible for our response. So let's be honest, how much of your life is built around avoiding pain and chasing pleasure? How many of your decisions are made based on what feels good in the moment, rather than what feels right in your soul? We scroll endlessly, we binge, we escape, we medicate not because we're weak, but because we've been taught that anything other than happiness is failure. But what if sadness is sacred? What if grief is a gateway? What if discomfort is the doorway to awakening? There is a deep psychological danger in idolizing happiness. It creates the illusion that life is supposed to be easy, that if we're struggling, something is wrong. But Viktor Frankl's entire philosophy turns that on its head. He invites us to ask not how can I be happy, but what is life asking of me right now? That question cuts through all the noise. It brings us face to face with responsibility, with purpose, with soul. You see, happiness is a byproduct of alignment. It comes when your actions match your values, when your life reflects your essence. You don't have to chase it, you have to live it. But to live it, you must first understand what you're here for. And that requires something terrifying: silence, reflection, honesty. It requires sitting alone with your thoughts without distraction. No music, no screens, just you and the question, what gives my life meaning when everything else is taken away? That's why Frankl's ideas are so dangerous to modern society, because they can't be packaged into a 5-step plan. They can't be sold as a product. Meaning is not something you buy. It's something you become. And becoming is painful. It involves death of ego, death of illusion, death of false identities. But on the other side of that death is something no happiness guru can give you: wholeness. And here's the paradox. Once you stop chasing happiness, once you start living a life of deep responsibility, service, and authenticity, you begin to feel something richer than happiness. You begin to feel peace. Not the peace of comfort, but the peace of knowing you are exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you are meant to do. Even if it's hard, especially if it's hard, because meaning is forged in fire, not comfort. So we must ask ourselves, are we building lives that look good on the outside but feel empty on the inside? Are we measuring success by the number of smiles we post or the depth of our presence? Are we confusing pleasure with purpose? These are not rhetorical questions. These are the questions that determine everything. Because until we face them, we will keep running in circles, chasing happiness like a mirage in the desert, always just out of reach. Frankl believed that man's deepest desire is not pleasure, but purpose. Not comfort, but contribution. Not escape, but engagement. And the moment we understand that, our entire life reorganizes itself. We stop asking, how can I feel better? And we start asking, how can I be of service? We stop seeking the next high and start seeking the next truth. And that shift changes everything. The world does not need more happy people. The world needs more whole people. People who are rooted in something deeper than mood. People who can hold space for suffering, both their own and others. People who don't flinch in the face of darkness because they've made peace with their own. That's what Viktor Frankl invites us into. Not a life of endless smiles, but a life of unshakable meaning. So let me ask you something, and really sit with this. If you were told you would never feel happy again, would your life still be worth living? If the answer is no, then maybe it's time to ask a deeper question. Maybe it's time to stop chasing the illusion. Maybe it's time to start building a life that means something, even if it hurts. Especially if it hurts, because happiness is not the goal. Meaning is, and when you live with meaning, happiness may come. But even if it doesn't, you will still be alive in the deepest sense of the word. And that is something no illusion can ever give you. Let's go deeper. If happiness is not the goal, then we must ask, what are we really seeking? What is it within us that longs for something more, something deeper, something that can't be captured in a smile or a vacation photo? What is that ache we feel even in moments of joy, the ache that whispers, there's something else? We don't talk about this enough, because to talk about it is to admit that happiness, the thing we're told to chase, isn't enough, and that terrifies us. We've been fed the idea that if we're not happy, we're broken. But what if unhappiness is not an error, but a signal that you're misaligned, that you're chasing shadows, that you've traded your soul for a script? Viktor Frankl saw this clearly. He said, when a person can't find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. And in that single line, he exposed the entire machinery of modern life. We distract ourselves because we don't know what else to do. We fill our lives with noise, with novelty, with numbing because the silence is too loud. But in that silence lives the truth. The truth that we are not here to consume life, but to contribute to it. That we are not here to feel good, but to do good. That we are not here to escape our suffering, but to transform it into something sacred. The philosophers knew this. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "It is not death that a man should fear, but never beginning to live." What does it mean to begin to live? It means to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop pretending that happiness is the prize and pain is the punishment. Real life is not a highlight reel. It's a sacred tension between joy and sorrow, between light and shadow. And only those willing to embrace both can truly awaken. What if the purpose of your life is not to feel good, but to feel everything, to be fully alive to the heartbreak, the uncertainty, the wonder, the rage, the ecstasy? What if the goal is not to avoid suffering, but to redeem it, to extract wisdom from it, to let it carve you into someone who sees more, feels more, and offers more? That is the soul's real hunger, not for happiness, but for depth. We have confused distraction with peace. We think if we can just stay busy enough, entertained enough, successful enough, the emptiness will go away. But the man who sits still, who stares into the void and doesn't flinch, he discovers something else. He discovers that the void isn't empty. It's waiting. Waiting for you to stop performing and start listening. Waiting for you to ask the question that changes everything. What is my life actually for? That question is dangerous, because once you ask it, you can't go back. You can't unsee the truth. You can't unfeel the disconnection. And yet, that's where the journey begins. not with answers, but with questions, not with certainty, but with surrender. The man who walks into that uncertainty with open eyes is the one who finds real freedom, not the freedom of pleasure, but the freedom of purpose. Frankl believed that we are not driven by the will to pleasure, like Freud thought, nor by the will to power, like Nietzsche, but by the will to meaning. And meaning doesn't come easily. It must be forged, often in fire. Sometimes it's born through pain, through trauma, through loss. Sometimes it whispers through art, through nature, through service. But always, meaning asks something of us. It demands that we show up. So we must ask, where in our lives have we chosen the easy path over the meaningful one? Where have we sacrificed depth for comfort? Where have we avoided truth because it was inconvenient? The answers are not meant to shame you. They are meant to awaken you. Because the moment you become aware of your sleepwalking, you also become capable of waking up. And when you do wake up, something strange happens. You realize that pain isn't the enemy. In fact, pain becomes your compass. It reveals what matters. It points to what's broken. It shows you where you've disconnected from your soul. And instead of numbing it, you begin to listen. You begin to lean in. You begin to ask, what is this pain trying to teach me? That's the secret Frankl understood. That suffering, when faced with courage, becomes sacred. That the man who suffers with purpose is stronger than the man who avoids it with pleasure. That meaning doesn't eliminate pain, but it transforms it. And in that transformation, we find a freedom that no amount of happiness can ever offer. Think about your own life. When did you grow the most? When did you become wiser, deeper, more compassionate? It probably wasn't during the good times. It was when everything fell apart. When you were brought to your knees. When you had to decide who you really were, stripped of all comfort. That is the furnace of transformation. That is where the soul is forged. Frankl wrote, "Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how." What is your why? Have you found it? Or are you still waiting for happiness to show up and give your life meaning? What if it's the other way around? What if meaning gives rise to happiness, not the other way around? What if happiness is the echo of a life lived in alignment? This is not about rejecting joy. Joy is beautiful. Joy is sacred. But joy is not something you chase, it's something you receive. It comes uninvited when your life is rooted in truth. When your actions are aligned with your essence. When you stop trying to feel good and start trying to be good. Not in a moral sense, but in a soul sense. And here's the paradox. When you stop needing to be happy, you start becoming whole. Wholeness includes sadness. It includes fear. It includes doubt. But it also includes strength, clarity, peace, and love. Not the love that flatters. The love that frees. The love that says, I see you in your darkness, and I'm not afraid. That love begins with how you treat yourself. Maybe you've spent years trying to fix yourself, to reach some ideal state where you're finally okay. But what if you're not broken? What if the discomfort you feel is not a sign of dysfunction, but a sign of awakening? What if your sadness is not a problem, but a guide? What if the moments you feel most lost are the moments life is trying to redirect you towards something real? We must redefine what it means to be alive. Being alive is not about constant happiness. It's about depth, presence, connection. It's about living in such a way that, when you look back, you know you showed up for yourself, for others, for the mystery. That you didn't hide behind comfort. That you didn't numb yourself into oblivion. That you felt it all, and you grew. So here's a challenge. Stop asking, what will make me happy? Start asking, what will make me meaningful? What am I willing to suffer for? What am I willing to live for? These questions are not comfortable, but they are real. And in the age of illusion, reality is revolutionary. You don't need more pleasure. You need more purpose. You don't need more validation. You need more vision. You don't need to escape the darkness. You need to walk through it with your eyes open, your heart soft, and your spirit grounded in something eternal. Happiness is a byproduct. It's not the prize. It's a shadow that follows you when you walk the path of meaning. So walk, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Because on the other side of that struggle is not happiness, but something far better, yourself. Now we arrive at the part most people never reach. The part after you stop chasing happiness. After you've burned the old maps. After you've sat in the silence and didn't run. This is where something deeper begins to emerge, not a feeling, not a mood, but a kind of clarity. A groundedness. You're no longer asking, how can I feel better? You're asking, what does this moment require of me? And when you begin to live from that place, everything changes. You start to realize that the pursuit of happiness wasn't just misleading, it was a form of control, a subtle manipulation. Because if happiness is the goal, then whoever defines happiness controls your life. And in our world, happiness has been packaged, commercialized, and sold back to us in the form of consumption, distraction, and dependence. We're told happiness is the beach vacation, the luxury car, the perfect relationship. So what do? We chase those things. And when they leave us empty, we think something is wrong with us. But the problem was never us. The problem was the illusion. Viktor Frankl didn't survive a concentration camp because he was happy. He survived because he had meaning, because he had something to live for. And that's what we've lost today. We've confused feeling good with being whole. And they are not the same. Wholeness means facing yourself fully. It means meeting your own shadow without flinching. It means holding joy and sorrow in the same breath and not collapsing under the weight of either. When you stop needing happiness, you become dangerous in the best way. You become unshakable because your peace is no longer dependent on conditions. Your worth is no longer tied to outcomes. You are no longer hostage to the highs and lows of external life. You begin to live from the inside out. And that is the beginning of freedom. You see, the man who walks away from the illusion of happiness doesn't become cold or cynical. Quite the opposite. He becomes alive. He begins to feel things he never allowed himself to feel before. Grief, yes, but also awe, wonder, reverence, gratitude that goes beyond words. Not because everything is perfect, but because he finally sees. He sees the beauty in the broken, the sacred in the ordinary, the divine in the tragic. Frankl wrote, In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning. That's not just philosophy. That's a key to life. When you find a reason, your reason, everything shifts. You stop resisting the pain because now it serves a purpose. You stop fearing the unknown because now you walk with intention. You stop being a victim of circumstance and you become an author of your life. And here's the twist. When you stop chasing happiness, you begin to experience something deeper than happiness. You begin to experience fulfillment. Fulfillment doesn't shout. It doesn't sparkle. It doesn't trend. It sits quietly in your chest, like a steady pulse, reminding you that you are on the right path, not the easy path, but the real one. This is why rituals, solitude, deep conversations, and creation matter. They reawaken the soul. They reconnect us to what's real. Not the synthetic highs of dopamine, but the quiet dignity of being present, of giving, of serving, of creating something that didn't exist before. That's where real joy lives. Not in the absence of pain, but in the presence of purpose. So let's ask the question again, but differently this time. What are you willing to suffer for? Because whatever your answer is, that's where your meaning lives. And when you give yourself to that, something ancient awakens. You stop asking the world to make you happy, and you start asking, how can I make this moment matter? That one shift can change an entire life. Let's be brutally honest. Most people are not living, they're waiting for the right moment, waiting to feel ready, waiting until they're happy enough to start. But life doesn't wait, and meaning doesn't come to those who sit on the sidelines. Meaning is forged in the fire. You step into the storm not because it feels good, but because it's true. Because something inside you refuses to live one more day in illusion. And when you do, you become someone else. Or rather, you become yourself. The real you. The one who was buried under layers of performance, anxiety, and conditioning. The one who remembers what it means to be still, to breathe, to create, to love without needing to be loved back, to give without keeping score, to live without needing applause. That's why Frankl's work is so timeless, because it's not about comfort, it's about transcendence. It's about the human spirit rising in the face of unimaginable darkness and choosing to mean something. And if that's possible in a concentration camp, it's possible anywhere. In your apartment, in your job, in the middle of heartbreak, in the middle of nowhere. So what now? What do you do with all this? You begin. Begin by telling the truth to yourself. Stop pretending you're happy if you're not. Stop chasing what doesn't feed your soul. Stop lying to yourself just to keep others comfortable. You don't owe the world your happiness. You owe it your authenticity, your depth, your courage to feel it all. Start asking better questions. Not how can I feel better, but what is this moment teaching me? Not how can I escape this pain, but what is this pain revealing about who I am? Not how do I get what I want, but how do I become someone worth following, loving, trusting, remembering? Build your life around those questions. And let the answers come slowly. Let them surprise you. Let them break you open. Because in that breaking, you are reborn not into a happier person, but into a truer one. And maybe, just maybe, In the quiet of that truth, you'll begin to feel something new. Not a rush, not a high, but a steady warmth. A sacred stillness. A quiet joy that asks for nothing but your presence. That's not happiness. That's meaning. And it will carry you through anything. So now I leave you with one final question. One that Viktor Frankl would ask, not with judgment, but with fierce love. If your life were a message to the world, what would it say? Because whether you realize it or not, you're already writing that message. Every day, every choice, every breath. So don't waste it trying to be happy. Live it in such a way that it matters. Because happiness is temporary, but meaning is eternal.